Okay, I think we're all set to go.
All right, we'll call the meeting, Conservation Commission meeting on December 12th to order. If you'd call the roll, Phil,
Mr. Collins,
here.
Ms. Martinez,
Here.
Mr. Alminius,
Here.
Mr. Miller, absent. Mr. Jones,
Here.
Mr. Ryan,
Here.
and Mr. Bonjour.
Here.
We do have a quorum.
Yes, we do. Thank you. So the first item we have is a petition for notice of intent for field work relating to the Venture Pond Improvement Project. Work includes kayak launch, fishing pier, repair to the existing stormwater outfall head wall at the property known as Southside Wilbraham Road. And this is the park department doing it.
Do we need to open a public hearing, or is?
Yes, well, this is a public hearing. This is the first time we're hearing it, so this is a public hearing. Thank you, Juanita. So who's here for the park?
Hi, I'm Dan Shaw from GZA. I'm here for that. And
Okay,
with
Dan.
me is Jackie Claver.
And I could share my screen. Could you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. It's always different when you change from Zoom to Teams.
Yeah.
We share so we get a visual. Oop, that's my email. All right, could everyone see my screen?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Okay.
And I will let Dan start.
So we're working for the Springfield Department of Parks on this city-owned parcel at Venture Pond. The area we're looking at is at the corner of Charlton Street and Collingwood Road, and the work area is indicated here. And the proposed work includes creating a hand carry kayak launch for water access, a fishing deck that cantilevers over the water but is built on the land side, bituminous concrete pathways that connect to those two features, and then repair of a stormwater outfall that currently has a crack in it in the pipe, which is exposed, and people currently use that stormwater outfall in this area for launching their kayaks and standing on for fishing, and the foot traffic and erosion that results can be addressed by creating repairs to that area and then providing formalized access for those two existing uses on either side of it. So that's the extent of the proposed work.
All right, so I will get into the wetlands. So the site was delineated of August of this year, and I'm gonna pull up the plans so we get a little visual. There it is, this one. This, okay. So Venture Pond, ooh, the other ones went away. So Venture Pond is more or less a closed system. It has no inlet or outlet. And the resources we found on site include a bank, which is seen by this line right here, and land underwater. So going into the permanent impacts, the first one I'll talk about is the vegetation removal. So we are removing vegetation inside the pond. These include shrubs and invasive species, and more or less this is being done by the kayak launch area and along the fishing pier. And we're mostly doing it along the fishing pier so that when people are fishing, their lines don't get caught in the vegetation, which would be frustrating to them, and they would cut it, and we don't want fishing line in the pond. We actually have a updated plan for the head wall repair area. We were kind of thinking of this as an option for contractors as we're going through the bidding phase, is of having a coffer dam instead of just a turbidity curtain, which you see here. So it'll be a turbidity curtain which traps the sediments, but also we are proposing a coffer dam. And for that, we would pump out all of the water inside of the work area so that the contractors could work in the dry instead of the wet. So it will cause, less sediment to remove the area, and there will be a dewatering location over here. Additionally, there will be some tree clearing in terms of the kayak area and the fishing pier. And I believe there's only 4 or 5 mature trees that we are removing.
Yep.
Let me find my other one disappeared. So for the actual work area, for the kayak launch, they are going to be precast planks that are going to be installed. We are proposing landscape boulders along the kayak launch, as currently the people who use the pond hold on to the head wall. And it's kind of nice to have stability when you're going to the kayaks. You don't just fall. And since this pond is so variable in water depth, it kind of, it's a closed system. So water only leaves due to trees sucking up the water. So the pond is pretty much flooded all the time. So it'll be nice for the people with the kayaks to have boulders to hold on to. And then we are proposing a asphalt pathway to the kayak launch and the fishing pier. And this will be ADA compliant for people with wheelchairs and disabilities. There will be a tiered wooden ramp system to the fishing pier, which is right here. And it does look like it is along the bank, but is actually suspended in the air. So it will be on a pier system. I don't know how high above the water it will be, but I believe it's a few feet.
Yeah, it's 3 feet or so. And
yeah.
it's the posts are on the land and then the deck cantilevers out.
Yep. And then it's not, on the land, so water will be able to flow underneath it. In terms of the head wall area, they're going to stabilize this area. We're not doing a full replacement. We're just fixing the 10-foot section. I believe the pipe goes all the way out here. I don't know where the
Yeah, there's storm drains out on the street.
Yeah.
And so there's an exposed section of that pipe currently, which it's a concrete pipe and has a crack in it and the head wall's leaning. So the idea would be to replace that section of pipe, backfill it with providing a boulder, low wall surrounding the head wall, and then fill in that area, which is currently steep and scoured out, which is exposing the pipe currently. So we'd be filling that in and then restoring that area.
And we will be doing proposed seed plantings with native plant seed mix along the pathway. And going into the regulations, we believe we are in compliance of the performance standards for bank and land underwater. Additionally, we did a wildlife habitat evaluation, which we attached to this application. And we are looking to get a variance to work within the Springfield 50-foot undisturbed zone for the pathway and the tree clearing that we have on the land. So we did receive comments back from DP. Do you want me to go through those?
Please.
All right. We'll pull those up. Just get my notes. Oh, not that one. Oh, too many files. All right, so the first one, what time of year is the work to be performed? And the work is expected to start at the earliest of spring of 2024. That will be determined on, the bidding and when they plan on starting work. But that is the earliest that we know. They had a comment of some of the work is eligible for review as a limited project, and we believe he was referring to the fishing deck, which the fishing pier is to be constructed entirely in the buffer zone. It does not involve permanent impacts to the bank or land underwater. And the fishing pier is on piers, so it'll be above the land, so water will be able to go underneath it and flow into the pond as it currently does. And the work is expected to meet the performance standards, so we do not feel that it requires review as a limited project. The third comment is the existing stormwater outfall is located in the bank resource, which is currently not allowed under current regulations. Divides it there, and it's and that regulation does not allow discharges or control of sedimentation to be placed on a bank resource. The regulatory preferred option is to entirely remove the outfall from the resource area and to have a setback from the receiving water. So that neither the pipe nor riprap will be located in the resource area. And he says limited projects do not apply to this regulation. So we are not entirely replacing the stormwater. We are just fixing the 10-foot section of pipe and the head wall area. And if we were to move it back outside of the bank and into the buffer zone, it would involve a lot of land clearing and grading to be in the standards of the current stormwater regulations. All right, for the fourth one.
Now,
Oh, do you have a quick question?
while they wouldn't allow a new one, this is basically a repair and maintenance.
Yes, so we're repairing and maintaining it in kind. We're not digging up the whole system.
Right.
So.
And maintenance and repair is allowed under
Yes.
the regulations.
Mm-hmm. Yep, so that is what we are going for. Repair and maintenance, not a completely rip out and redo. So, yes. And then the fourth question is, why are the proposed landscape boulders to be placed in the land underwater? And he is referring to these right here. And I mentioned that currently the users of this area use head wall stability. So we're trying to create that same feature for the new kayak launch, which will allow people to hold on to these boulders. And these boulders can also be seen as habitat for, fish to hide under and maybe, turtles to climb up. So we're just trying to provide the same features that are currently there, but more, natural in boulders instead of like a giant concrete bar that wouldn't be so natural and pretty for this area.
Where do you anticipate they will actually launch? On the side where the boulders are, or the other side? Or
Probably
the end?
this side. I think since we're going to have the boulders here as a resource, we would hope people would come, walk down here, come off the kayak launch and hold on to these boulders. So they don't mess with these trees right here, because these are, I believe, little overhanging trees, and hopefully people don't grab onto them as they're going in. They would grab onto these boulders.
What is the space between the kayak launch and the boulders? Could they put the kayak right in the middle there, which would make it real easy to get in? Or is it very close? Do you know what I'm saying? So the area, so there's the kayak launch.
The dark gray rectangle.
The dark gray.
Right.
Yep.
And then just before you get to the boulders, there seems to be a space. Is
Yeah,
that space
before
big
you get-
enough
So
for a
before you-
kayak?
Before you get to the head wall, you mean? Like as we
No,
move downwards
in
on the
between-
page?
In between the
this area?
boulders
Right
and
there,
the,
right there, just
Yeah.
where
It
your
looks
arrow
like it's
is.
only
Oh.
like 2 feet. You
Yeah,
can kinda see,
yeah,
I don't have the full
it's right
scale.
there. Yeah.
I've actually seen some kayak launches where those boulders are set back enough so that you put the kayak right there, and then it protects the kayak from tipping when you're getting on from a launch.
Mhm.
I just
Well,
was
yeah,
wondering if
That's
what-
the intended relationship here. The launch you're seeing is 12 feet in width, and people would carry their kayaks down and they would wade into the water on that dark gray rectangle, setting their kayaks floating on the water, and then they could steady their hands on those boulders, which would be right
it's
next to them.
shallow. It's shallow enough.
It's shallow there.
Yeah.
Yep, it's
Oh,
shallow.
Oh,
Yep,
okay.
yep. So there's 1 foot contours that are shown coming out along there. So it's a 8.3% slope, similar to a handicap ramp,
Okay.
an accessible ramp. And the slope coming down the hill leading to it is
Oh, okay,
5%.
okay.
Yep.
but I see what Juanita's saying. If the boulders were 30 inches away from the edge of they would put the kayak in between the boulders and the ramp.
Yeah, I mean,
And
be
be
that is
like a
another
nice
way
little
of doing
straight
it.
launch. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean the ramp, the dark gray rectangle is a ramp at the surface of the ground extending into the water. So that ramp ends up being half underwater, half, and
Oh,
it's
okay. All
that
right.
ramp is
Sorry.
right. It's not going out
Yeah.
over
Yeah.
top of the water. It's a walking surface, and you end up, knee deep
Okay.
in water by the time you're
Oh,
halfway
that
out there.
really
Yep.
makes sense.
Yep.
All
So
right,
then you're
now it
reaching
makes-
out. So you're
Yeah,
steadying
think of like
the
a boat
three-dimensional
ramp.
features are the
Yeah.
boulders that you're steadying
So it is
yourself
like
on.
it's like
It's
a boat ramp.
It's
You're
a boat
right.
ramp
Yeah.
for
Right.
it's
And
a
it's
it's a modest
permanent.
boat ramp. It's permanent
Mhm.
and
It's
it's just
permanent.
for hand carry boats. Yep.
Oh, I was thinking, because my next question was the launch, was the deck, was it permanent? But yeah,
Yep.
I see what
Yep.
you're saying.
Yep. These
That makes
features are
sense.
permanent. Yep.
It does-
And
that
what
was-
about,
Yep.
and what about the fishing deck? Is that permanent or is
It
that
is. It would
seasonal?
be. It would be permanent.
Permanent.
The option for a seasonal deck would involve more maintenance from the Parks Department having to pull
Yeah.
something in and out of the water. So we felt by siting it entirely on the land side, but designing it so it cantilevers out, it provides that water access, but doesn't require that amount of
Oh, yeah.
high maintenance. Yep. So that's a
Trying to
detail of
find-
it.
Here's
Yep.
a good, oh,
That's
Oh, I
yep, that
see.
shows you the relationship.
Yeah, yep. That's good. That's good.
So yep, go ahead.
Question, why bituminous? Why not crushed stone or stone dust?
That choice was to prevent erosion, just to make it more durable. A site like this where we don't have enough horizontal space to have, say, a drainage swale or something else to intercept water coming down. If we have runoff crossing the path and it were a loose material like stone dust, there wouldn't be much to prevent sedimentation and erosion from coming off of that path over time and getting into the pond and causing rutting. So we felt that this would be the most low maintenance, low impact way to have a firm and stable, accessible way to these features.
Okay, it doesn't look like it's the pretty mild slope, right?
It is, yeah. It's a 5% running slope and a 2% cross slope. And it's sited where it is just to navigate vertically from the road up above down the 5 feet or so, 4 or 5 feet down to the water's edge. So that's why we picked that layout for the path.
Yeah, it just makes it pervious if you do it with the stone dust type stuff. That's the
Somewhat,
only thing.
yeah. That material, yeah.
Is this material pervious?
It's not. This
Bituminous is not.
right. This is asphalt.
Oh, asphalt. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
macadam, right? Yeah.
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 Certainly more stable for a wheelchair, but
Yeah.
And for maintenance, I'm sure that's one of the reasons too.
Yep.
I tell you what, I know, well, maybe it is better than being by two, because I tell you what's going to happen if the winters get back to being cold again,
You're
that's gonna
dreaming,
become-
Chris.
Yeah,
the ground
that's
would
going to
freeze.
become the area where the skaters, and they'll end up shoveling it down to the fishing deck and putting their skates on there.
Yeah.
That used to be the neighborhood. That's where all those kids learned to skate. They all had hockey games, but it doesn't freeze anymore.
Yeah. None of them do.
Are there? I'm sorry, we didn't mean to interrupt you. Are you finished with your presentation, or
Yes.
do you have more
Yeah.
to add?
No, I believe we're good. So if you have any questions, just let us know and we could address them.
That's gonna look really nice. I was just down there a couple of months ago, and this is gonna look good. This is what the place needs.
Do other commissioners have questions or comments? Since I don't hear any, we will need to continue this because we are doing it on Zoom to allow time for public input, and the public may either call the main, it's the main number, 787.
Yeah, you can call the main number at 413-787-6020, or you can also email me at pdromey, DROMEY @springfieldcityhall.com.
Okay, so if anyone in the public has comments they'd like to give during the 2 weeks in between the two meetings, please feel free to do so. And then at the next meeting, we'll close the public hearing and issue an order. A motion to continue until our next meeting is in order.
I move to continue.
Thank you, Frank.
I'll second
I'll
it.
second it.
Thank you.
So voting, also, if you guys could just stop screen sharing, thank you. Voting to continue the meeting, Mr. Collins,
Yes.
Ms. Martinez,
Yes.
Mr. Alminius,
Yes.
Mr. Miller absent, Mr. Jones,
Yes.
Ryan,
Yes.
Right. Okay.
or Mr. Bonjour.
Yeah.
Thank you.
This will be continued, and just to give a heads up, it won't be until the first meeting in January, because we're not gonna have a second meeting in December.
Okay.
Well conceived.
Thank you for your presentation.
Thank
Have a
you.
good evening and a pleasant Christmas.
Thanks.
Thanks.
That brings us to item 3, which is discussion of proposed open water habitat work at Watershaps Pond, GZA, on behalf of the Springfield Parks Department.
Hi, good evening, Commission. I'm Adrienne Dunk. I'm here on behalf of the Parks Department. So at Watershaps Pond, I know you're all very familiar with the pond and the dam work that occurred there. But the pond was drawn down for nearly 2 years. During that time, quite a bit of vegetation grew on the exposed pond bottom. And since the pond was refilled, a lot of that vegetation has died back and returned to open water pond habitat. But there are some limited areas where vegetation persists, both standing dead vegetation that's woody, but also some living vegetation, and they are compromising public access to the pond. So the city is proposing some limited hydro raking to remove just that vegetation in limited areas. And that's in line with the project's aquatic and wetland resource monitoring and mitigation plan that was part of the original order of conditions. So we just wanted to discuss this work with the commission. And so you understand the scope and the scale of it. And if there's any specific concerns, we can, adjust to meet those concerns or clarify the work. So I am going to share my screen. So this is Alden Street and the Roosevelt.
Oh, you
Not
haven't
actually
shared it.
sharing yet. Had to click 2 buttons. Okay,
There we go.
great. So here's Alden Street and the Roosevelt Ave Bridge. We would propose that the contractor access the water with the hydro raker through here. We're specifying, no ground disturbance, so they would have to put down some type of ground protection mats, something like that to avoid both erosion, but also protect the tree roots that are there. And then also no tree clearing is allowed. But they may be able to have to trim a branch or two, but they bring this equipment in on a trailer that's just pulled by a regular truck. Then it goes into the water. And then we're proposing in this long linear stretch to remove this standing dead locust that's there. And I have a photo. So it's this limited area where locust trees grew and they are sticking up and they're they have big thorns on them. And so they're impeding fishing in the area. People are getting their fishing lines all caught in them. So they would, the hydro rake has this big rake scooper and it scoops up just the vegetation and it leaves the sediment behind. And then it puts all the vegetation into a net that's above the water. So the water drips off of the plant roots back into the lake. And then they kind of barge that back to land, put it in a dumpster, and they'll dispose of it off site. There is a turbidity curtain proposed around the whole work area. So if there's localized sediment disturbance, it'll just, settle back in place. There's also standing dead locust. The second figure that was submitted to you, this is still Alden Street. There's the existing boat ramp here. There's a big patch of standing dead locust here in the middle of the water. It's about 200 feet. So on a windy day, if you're trying to use that boat ramp, you might get blown off course. So we're proposing also to remove the locust in that area. I don't have a photograph of it because from the boat ramp, it's very hard to see with the existing tree limbs in the way. And then the third and final location is up in Dan Baker Cove at Gunnery Sergeant Sullivan Park. So up here it is more shallow and quite a bit of emergent vegetation grew, and it's currently obscuring the boat ramp that exists here. And so I have a couple of photos of that. So this is the end of the boat ramp.
Oh, wow.
Yes, totally obscured by cattail, and there's some frag out further in the water. So nobody can use this boat ramp right now at the city park. And so again, we're proposing hydro raking about 120 feet wide, just so that people feel safe and comfortable accessing out into the open water of the lake. They feel like they can navigate it. They're not in a little narrow tunnel. And again, there'll be a turbidity curtain, and the hydro rake works the exact same way on the emergent vegetation. It gets the plant and the root, and it leaves the sediment behind.
Which is the only way to get rid of the
Yeah.
cattails and the frags is if you get the roots, so.
Exactly. Yep. That's why just like a cutting or some type of surface treatment wouldn't really be effective in these locations.
What
And
time of year are you thinking of doing this?
They actually want to do it this February.
Oh,
Oh.
good, because it's winter time. Good.
Yep. And that's we've that's the best time of year to do it also.
Mhm.
Just in case, I mean, if there's anybody watching the public, the locust and those plants, if that pond hadn't been down for 2 years, they would have never grown there anyway. It's because the pond was down longer than like a typical drawdown. It's just on for the winter months. So they got a chance to actually take a foothold. I don't know if you've ever tried to go through black locust, but they're pretty nasty with all the thorns to try to navigate through.
It's too bad that it was just, if it had just been Phragmites, but there's not too many great stands of cattails anymore. And then there were some in there, but I mean, I understand why they have to go, but the Phragmites, yes, that's everywhere, but the cattails get taken over by the Phragmites, though. And I just thought in that picture, it was a nice little stand of them.
There is quite a bit of cattail up in that
there
part
is?
of the pond. Yep, and it's a little bit interesting in that photo. The Phragmites is deeper, is further away than the cattail, but implementing the water monitoring program during the drawdown, and since it's refill, I have kayaked up Dan Baker Cove several times, and there's a lot of cattail in the pond. But it's a little bit obscured by the dense vegetation on the shoreline.
So if that piece was taken out, it's still on either side of it, or
Yep, this is cattail in the in the image. This is cattail in here, and this is a 2019 image, but there's quite a bit of cattail extending both up and downstream.
Yeah, that cove is fairly shallow. That's where cattails, it's an ideal habitat for them. And they were starting in there before this work started.
Yes, yep, and we've seen, they took off during the drawdown. Since the pond has been refilled, we have seen quite a bit of dieback of them, which is expected. And so, I know you joked about cold winters before. If we have a few cold winters, we would expect the cattail to die back pretty quickly. We can't count on that. And so we want to kind of ensure public access in these few areas, but then allow nature to kind of take its course in, limiting the cattail over time, kind of more slowly elsewhere.
Yeah, the cold winters just keep them in check from spreading. They spread by rhizomes and roots, so it wouldn't kill them all completely. Even if we had 2 or 3 old time winters, it would just shrink the size of them. That's all.
Yeah, exactly. Push them back towards shore a little bit. It might take out the deep water cattails, but we would expect cattail to continue.
A very edible plant, by the way, if you ever have to survive out there, cattail root.
If you're desperate.
Sound like an old Echoes person there, Chris.
Yeah, well, we used to actually cook them. I used to actually cook them for the kids.
Yeah.
Couldn't get away with that stuff today.
Yeah, right.
Are there other questions? Okay, again, this is just a discussion because this is under an already existing permit. Any other commissioners have questions about the work?
It's desperately needed. Thank you.
I'm all set.
There's one more bit of trivia about the black locust is in the old movies where you see the old castles and there would be a large thicket in between a moat and also a thicket. It was the black locust that they planted because the roots were so nasty, because the thorns on them are so nasty. So it's just a little bit of trivia history.
They
Great
are
detail.
also the largest species of legume.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, right. That is right.
Okay, well, thank you for the update, and that is covered under the maintenance of the permit that's there. So this was just an update for the commission.
Great. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Okay, so as I indicated, both Alvin and I are out of the office on the 20th. I forget, I think it's the 26th was supposed to be our next meeting. So I think the following meeting after that is January 8th. So I'll continue the notice of intent to that one. But other than
The 26th is a great day to take off, Phil. It's a good family day.
I'll be driving back from Philadelphia, so.
Ah,
But anyway, just a reminder, the Conservation Commission is still out. If anybody knows of anybody, it's posted on the city website. I think it closes on the 17th, but I'm not sure. I'll keep it closed depending on how many applications we get, but
Have you had any?
I don't know that until it
Oh.
closes, and then they tell me. So at that point, I can ask them to keep it out. But I did send it to the Massachusetts Association of Conservation Commission, and I also put it on the planning web serve I'm on. So we'll see. Hopefully we get somebody.
I think there were some people interested before the salary. Obviously,
Yeah,
needed
it
to
actually
pick
was a pretty good increase. I think it went from 52, which was the starting, up to 69. So that was a pretty good increase. So I'm hoping that draws some interest. So we shall see.
Yep. Any other commissioners? If not, I would say Merry Christmas to all
Yeah.
and Happy Holidays.
Yeah.
And
Merry
then I would
Christmas to all of
entertain,
you.
Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays.
and I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you,
Second.
Peter.
A second.
Frank, I think Frank beat you, Clarence. Sorry.
That's all good. Frank can have it.
Very good.
You got it,
All right.
Frank.
Okay, bye-bye.
See ya.
All right.